She was just trying to get home through the rain when she heard it. A small, broken sob cutting through the storm. Min-Jung turned to see a tiny figure huddled against the brick wall, soaking wet, clutching something to her chest. A little girl, no more than 5 years old, alone, abandoned, terrified. Min-Jung did what any decent person would do. She brought the child inside, wrapped her in blankets, promised her she was safe now. But 3 days later, when the knock came at her door, Min-Jung opened it to find 20 men in black suits and the most dangerous eyes she'd ever seen. The man they called the Silent Blade, the Korean Mafia boss who controlled everything from Vancouver to Los Angeles. And he wasn't there for a social call. He was there for his daughter, the little girl clinging to Min-Jung's leg, refusing to go with her own father. What happened next would change all 3 of their lives forever. Stay with me until the end, because this story will shatter everything you think you know about family, loyalty, and redemption. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Now, let's get into it. It's a cold, rain-soaked Thursday evening in Seattle's Koreatown. October 2024. The streets glisten with neon reflections from Korean BBQ restaurants, noraebang signs, and late-night markets where ajumas gossip over fresh banchan. This neighborhood is its own world, a place where Korean is spoken as often as English, where everyone knows everyone's business, and where certain names are never spoken above a whisper. Min-Jung Park walks these streets with her head down, exhausted from another brutal shift at Puget Sound Family Services. At 32, she's spent 7 years as a social worker specializing in immigrant families and displaced children. The work pays barely enough to cover her studio apartment rent, and the emotional toll is heavier than any paycheck could justify. But Min-Jung stays because she understands what it means to be powerless, to need someone to fight for you when the whole system feels designed to grind you down. Tonight, like every Thursday for the past 2 years, Min-Jung is walking home through the rain, her umbrella doing little against the Seattle downpour. Thinking about the case file she can't close: 3 Korean children in foster care because their mother was deported and their father is unknown. Just another word for abandoned. Just like Min-Jung's own father, who walked out when she was 7 and never looked back. But tonight is different. Tonight, Min-Jung's carefully controlled life is about to collide with a world she's spent her entire career trying to keep children away from. A world of power, violence, and ruthless men who destroy everything they touch. Tonight, she's about to find Soo-min, and nothing will ever be the same. The rain came down in sheets, turning Seattle's Koreatown into a blur of neon and wet pavement. Min-Jung Park pulled her coat tighter and kept her head down, navigating the familiar streets by muscle memory alone. Past Kim's BBQ with its perpetual haze of smoke and soju-soaked laughter. Past the noraebang, where drunk businessmen butchered ballads every Thursday night. Past the convenience store where Mrs. Choi would be restocking Ramayan and gossiping with whoever would listen. Home was 6 more blocks. Min-Jung counted them like a mantra. Her phone buzzed in her pocket the 4th time in the last hour. She didn't need to check to know it was her supervisor asking about the Martinez case. 3 children, ages 4 to 9, sitting in separate foster homes because their mother had been deported to El Salvador and their father was listed as unknown. Such a clinical word for abandoned. Such a neat way to say a man had walked away from his children and never looked back. Min-Jung had spent 7 years at Puget Sound Family Services, and she still couldn't make peace with that word. Unknown. At 32, she lived alone in a studio apartment that cost more than half her monthly salary. The walls were bare except for her social work degree and a single photograph of her mother taken before the exhaustion had carved permanent lines into her face. Before 12-hour shifts at the garment factory had bent her spine. Before cancer had taken what little the years had left, her mother had given everything to raise Min-Jung alone after her father left. No explanation, no forwarding address, just gone. One Tuesday morning when Min-Jung was 7, she remembered standing in the kitchen, watching her mother's hands shake as she poured cereal, trying to explain in broken English and Korean why Appa wasn't coming home. Min-Jung had understood even then. Her father had chosen himself. Powerful men always did. Tonight's intake meeting had been particularly brutal. A 15-year-old Korean girl, pregnant, thrown out by her family for bringing shame. Min-Jung had spent 3 hours finding her emergency housing, getting her enrolled in prenatal care, explaining her options in the mix of English and Korean the girl could understand. The whole time, the girl kept asking the same question. Why doesn't anyone want me? Min-Jung didn't have a good answer. She never did. The rain intensified as she turned onto her street, and Min-Jung quickened her pace. Her feet ached. Her head throbbed. She had case files to review before tomorrow's court hearing, but all she wanted was to collapse on her futon and pretend for a few hours that she made a difference. In a system designed to grind people down, she was fumbling for her keys when she heard it, a sound that didn't belong to the rain or the traffic or the distant karaoke bleeding from second-floor windows. A small, broken sound. A sob. Min-Jung froze, her hand still in her bag. She told herself to keep walking. She had 15 active cases and emotional reserves running on empty. Whatever this was, it wasn't her responsibility. Not tonight. But her feet wouldn't move forward. Because she knew that sound. She'd made it herself once, at 7 years old, realizing her father wasn't coming back. Min-Jung turned slowly, scanning the rain-soaked street. At first, she saw nothing, just the familiar storefronts, the graffitied dumpster, the fire escape ladder hanging uselessly 3 feet too high. Then she saw her, huddled against the brick wall of the closed dry cleaner. Barely visible in the shadow between streetlights was a child, a little girl, no more than 5 years old, wearing a dress that might have once been white, but was now torn and filthy. Her hair hung in wet tangles around a face streaked with tears and grime. She was curled into herself, small arms wrapped around her knees, shaking violently from cold or fear, or both, and clutched against her chest, protected from the rain by her small body, was a photograph. Even from this distance, Min-Jung could see it was damaged, the edges torn, the image water-stained. The little girl's eyes met Min-Jung's, wide, terrified, desperate. Min-Jung's bag slipped from her shoulder to the wet ground. Her keys scattered across the pavement with a metallic clatter that made the child flinch. Guan-chana, Min-Jung whispered, the Korean word for "it's okay" coming automatically. She took a slow step forward, hands visible, non-threatening. Guan-chana, baby. I'm not going to hurt you. The child didn't run. She just stared, her small chest rising and falling with rapid, panicked breaths. Min-Jung knelt on the wet pavement, ignoring the cold water soaking through her pants. Do you speak Korean? English? She switched languages, watching for recognition. What's your name, sweetheart? The little girl's lips moved, but no sound came out. That's when Min-Jung saw them, the marks on the child's wrists. Dark bruises, purple and yellow, in a pattern that told a story Min-Jung had seen too many times. Restraints. This child had been tied up. 7 years of protocol, of procedure, of doing everything by the book. All of it vanished in that moment. Min-Jung should call the police. She should call Child Protective Services. She should document everything, follow the system, let the trained professionals handle it. Instead, she stood up, shrugged off her coat, and wrapped it around the shivering child. Come on, baby, Min-Jung said softly, offering her hand. Let's get you warm. The little girl looked at Min-Jung's hand for a long moment. Then, moving slowly like an animal that had been hurt too many times, she reached out and took it. Her fingers were ice cold and impossibly small. Min-Jung's studio apartment was 6 blocks away. Tonight, it felt like 6 miles. But she kept her grip gentle, her pace slow, and her voice steady. As they walked through the rain, I've got you now, Min-Jung whispered, more to herself than the child. You're safe, I promise. She didn't know yet that she was making a promise she couldn't keep. She didn't know that the little girl in her arms was Soo Min-Kang, daughter of the most dangerous man in Seattle. She didn't know that in 3 days, her door would open to reveal 20 men in black suits and cold eyes. All Min-Jung knew was that she had found another broken thing that needed saving, and for tonight, that was enough. Min-Jung's apartment had never felt smaller. The child stood just inside the doorway, dripping water onto the worn linoleum, clutching that photograph like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to earth. She hadn't let go of it once during the 6-block walk, even when Min-Jung had tried to help her up the stairs. It's okay, Min-Jung said softly, switching to Korean. You're safe here. No one's going to hurt you. The little girl's eyes darted to the door, then to the window, mapping escape routes. She was looking at Min-Jung the way trapped animals looked at predators, calculating whether to run or freeze. Min-Jung moved slowly to the tiny bathroom, grabbing towels and her one clean bathrobe. When she came back, the child had pressed herself into the corner farthest from the door, making her small body even smaller. What's your name, sweetheart? Min-Jung knelt at a safe distance, holding out the towel. Can you tell me your name? Nothing. Just those wide, dark eyes watching her every movement. Min-Jung tried a different approach. My name is Min-Jung. I'm going to help you. But first we need to get you out of those wet clothes, okay? You must be so cold. The child's gaze flickered to the photograph in her hands. It was destroyed. Water had bled the colors together, torn edges revealing it had been ripped roughly from something larger. Min-Jung could barely make out the shapes, a woman, a man, and a small child between them. A family. Is that your family? Min-Jung asked gently, pointing to the photo. The little girl's grip tightened, and for the first time, she spoke. One word, barely a whisper. Yama. Mama. Min-Jung's chest constricted. Where's your mama, baby? But the child just shook her head, tears spilling down her dirty cheeks. It took 20 minutes of patient coaxing before the little girl let Min-Jung help her out of the ruined dress. The bruises on her wrists were worse up close, dark, angry marks that made Min-Jung's hands shake with rage at whoever had done this. There were more bruises on the child's arms, her legs, defensive wounds that told a story Min-Jung didn't want to imagine. She should call someone. CPS, the police. This was kidnapping, abuse, something criminal and terrible. But when Min-Jung looked at those terrified eyes, she thought about being 7 years old and scared, about a system that separated families and asked questions later, about foster homes that were supposed to be safe but weren't always. Just for tonight, Min-Jung whispered to herself, I'll figure it out tomorrow. She dressed the child in one of her own t-shirts, which hung like a dress on the tiny frame. The little girl hadn't let go of the photograph once, even while changing clothes. It was pressed against her chest now, leaving a wet imprint on the borrowed shirt. Are you hungry? Min-Jung asked. A small, tentative nod. Min-Jung's refrigerator held the usual sparse inventory of someone who ate most meals standing over the sink. But she had rice, eggs, and kimchi. She could make something with that. As she cooked, she watched the child from the corner of her eye. The little girl had moved from the corner to the futon, but she sat rigid, ready to bolt at any sound. When a car door slammed outside, she flinched so hard she nearly fell off the cushion. Min-Jung brought over a bowl of kimchi fried rice, the comfort food her mother had made on bad days. Try this. It's still hot. The child stared at the bowl like it might be a trap. I'll eat some first, Min-Jung said, taking a spoonful to prove it was safe. See, it's good. Slowly, carefully, the little girl reached for the bowl. She ate like someone who didn't know when the next meal would come, quick, desperate bites between glances at the door. What's your name? Min-Jung tried again, her voice gentle. Can you tell me? The child swallowed her rice, looked down at the photograph in her lap and whispered, Su-Min. Su-Min, Min-Jung repeated, the name settling in her chest. That's a beautiful name. Su-Min. Do you know how you got here? Can you tell me what happened? But Su-Min just shook her head, her small body starting to tremble again. Okay, Min-Jung said quickly. You don't have to talk about it. Not tonight. Tonight, you just rest. That first night, Su-Min wouldn't sleep unless Min-Jung kept the lights on. She woke up screaming twice, and each time Min-Jung had to spend an hour convincing her she was still safe, still protected, that no one was coming through the door. In the morning, Min-Jung called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. She told herself it was just for one day, just until Su-Min was calm enough to talk to the authorities, until Min-Jung could figure out who this child belonged to and how to get her home safely. 1 day became 2, then 3. Min-Jung bought children's clothes from the Korean market, where Mrs. Choi wouldn't ask too many questions. She cooked meals her mother had taught her: myeok-guk, japchae, steamed eggs that Su-Min could eat with a spoon. She put on Korean children's cartoons and watched as Su-Min's rigid posture slowly began to relax. On the second day, Su-Min spoke a full sentence. Can you fix it? She held out the ruined photograph, hope and heartbreak warring in her expression. Min-Jung took the photograph carefully, like the precious thing it was. I'll try, sweetheart. I'll try. She couldn't repair the water damage, but she found a frame at the dollar store and placed what was left of the photo inside. Su-Min hugged it to her chest, and for the first time, something that might have been a smile flickered across her face. On the third day, Su-Min sat beside Min-Jung on the futon instead of across the room. She didn't flinch when Min-Jung brushed her hair. She even laughed small and hesitant when Min-Jung made funny faces trying to get her to eat her vegetables. The apartment felt different, less empty, less like a place Min-Jung just existed, and more like a place someone lived. That afternoon, while Su-Min colored with crayons Min-Jung had bought, The child looked up and said clearly, "Thank you." Anai, big sister. Min-Jung felt something crack open in her chest. This wasn't supposed to happen. She wasn't supposed to get attached. This was temporary, just until she figured out where Su-min belonged. But as she watched this tiny, brave girl who'd survived something terrible and was learning to smile again, Min-Jung realized she'd already crossed a line she couldn't uncross. She didn't know the knock was coming. She didn't know that the illusion of safety she'd built was about to shatter. All she knew was that for the first time in years, her apartment didn't feel empty, and that was enough to make her forget that borrowed time always runs out. The knock came at 9:47 p.m. on the third night. While Su-min was finally sleeping peacefully for the first time since Min-Jung had found her. It wasn't a polite knock. It was the kind of knock that said the door was a courtesy, not an obstacle. Min-Jung froze halfway between the kitchenette and the futon where Su-min lay curled under blankets. Another knock, harder. This time, authoritative, final. She moved to the door, checking the peephole out of habit. Her blood went cold. The hallway was filled with men. Not just a few 20, maybe more, all wearing identical black suits that probably cost more than Min-Jung's yearly salary. They stood with the kind of stillness that spoke of training and violence, held in careful check. And at the center of them, directly in front of her door, stood a man who made every instinct in Min-Jung's body scream danger. He was tall, maybe 6'1", with the kind of presence that didn't need volume or movement to command a room. His face was all sharp angles, high cheekbones, strong jaw, eyes so dark they looked black in the dim hallway light. His suit was immaculate, his expression completely neutral, and somehow that made him more terrifying than if he'd been scowling. Min-Jung had seen his face before, not in person, but in the Korean community newspaper, always in the background of photos, never quite in focus. Kang Jin-Woo. They called him the Silent Blade, Seattle's Korean Mafia Boss. Her hand trembled on the doorknob. Behind her, she heard Su-min stir in her sleep, making a small sound. The knock came again. Patient, inevitable. Min-Jung's mind raced through options. Call the police? These men would be gone before sirens arrived, and she'd be marked. Pretend she wasn't home? They clearly knew she was. Run? There was nowhere to go except the fire escape, and she wouldn't get 5 feet with Su-min. She opened the door 6 inches, keeping the chain lock engaged. Can I help you? The man at the center, Jin-Woo, didn't blink. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, controlled, and somehow more frightening for its calm. You have my daughter. I'm here to take her home. Min-Jung's hand tightened on the door. I don't know what you're, Kang Su-min. He said the name like he was stating a fact, not making a request. 5 years old, black hair, brown eyes, wearing a t-shirt 3 sizes too large and holding a damaged photograph. His eyes flickered past Min-Jung into the apartment. She's sleeping on your futon. Min-Jung's mouth went dry. I found a lost child. I was planning to Miss Park. Her name in his mouth made her stomach drop. He knew who she was. I appreciate that you kept my daughter safe. Now step aside. Everything in Min-Jung screamed to slam the door. But she forced herself to meet those cold, dark eyes. How do I know you're her father? How do I know you're not the one who hurt her? Something flickered across Jin-Woo's face too fast to read. The bruises on her wrists are from zip ties. The defensive wounds on her arms are from fighting her kidnappers. She was taken from her home 4 days ago by men who wanted to use her against me. His voice remained steady, but there was something underneath now, something sharp. I paid their ransom. They got spooked and dumped her in Koreatown rather than risk the exchange. I've been searching for her for 96 hours. Then you should be relieved she's safe, Min-Jung said, her social worker training kicking in. But I need to verify, Miss Park. Jin-Woo took 1 step closer to the door. Just one. But suddenly the 6 inches between them felt like nothing. I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you what's going to happen. You're going to let me see my daughter. Behind Min-Jung, Su-min made another sound. A whimper. Then a word that made Min-Jung's heart stop. Yama? Min-Jung turned her head slightly, keeping Jin-Woo in her peripheral vision. Su-min was sitting up on the futon, rubbing her eyes, looking toward the door with sleepy confusion. Then she saw him. The change was instantaneous. Su-min's face went from drowsy to terrified in a heartbeat. She scrambled backward on the futon, her small body pressing against the wall, and started screaming, no, no, Andway, Andway. The Korean words for no came out in panic shrieks. Don't let him. Please, Anai, please. Min-Jung's protective instinct overrode every ounce of self-preservation. She tried to close the door, but Jin-Woo's hand shot out, catching it with enough force to snap the chain lock like it was made of paper. He didn't enter. He just stood in the doorway, his eyes fixed on his daughter, who was now sobbing hysterically, her small body shaking with terror. Soo-min. His voice was different now, softer, almost gentle. But the little girl only screamed louder. Min-Jung positioned herself between them, her arms spread wide, even though she knew it was futile. Get out. You're scaring her. She's my daughter. She's terrified of you. Jin-Woo's jaw clenched. For a moment, Min-Jung saw something break through that controlled expression, something that looked like pain. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by cold calculation. 24 hours, he said finally. You have 24 hours to prepare her. He pulled a business card from his pocket and placed it on the doorframe. My men will be stationed outside. Don't try to run. Don't try to call the police. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. And if I refuse? Min-Jung's voice shook, but held steady. Jin-Woo looked at her for a long moment. Then I'll come back in 25 hours and take her anyway. But you seem like someone who cares about my daughter's well-being. His eyes flickered to Soo-min, still sobbing behind Min-Jung. So I'm giving you time to make this less traumatic for her. Use it wisely. He stepped back, and his men moved with him like a coordinated unit. But he paused at the top of the stairs, turning back one more time. Miss Park, my daughter eats miyak guk for breakfast. She's allergic to strawberries. She sleeps with the lights on because she's afraid of the dark. His voice was flat, factual. I know everything about her. Everything except how to make her stop being afraid of me. Then he was gone, his men following like shadows, leaving Min-Jung standing in her doorway with a screaming child and 24 hours to figure out how to give a terrified little girl back to the monster she was afraid of, or the father she'd forgotten how to trust. Min-Jung closed the door with shaking hands and turned to Soo-min, who had curled into a ball on the futon, rocking back and forth. Anai, don't let him take me. Soo-min sobbed. Please, please don't let the scary man take me. Min-Jung sat beside her and pulled her close, feeling the little girl's heart racing against her ribs. I won't, Min-Jung whispered, even though she had no idea if it was a promise she could keep. I won't let anyone hurt you. Outside, she could hear footsteps in the hallway, taking positions, waiting. The 24-hour clock had started, and Min-Jung had no idea what to do when it ran out. 15 years earlier, Kang Jin-Woo stepped off a plane at SeaTac International Airport with $200 in his pocket, a duffel bag of clothes, and absolutely nothing to lose. He was 19 years old. He spoke 3 words of English. He had no family, no connections, no safety net. What he had was a work ethic forged in the poorest neighborhoods of Bizen and a fundamental understanding that the world only gave you what you were strong enough to take. He started washing dishes at a Korean restaurant in Koreatown, worked 16-hour days, saved every dollar. Within 6 months, he was managing the floor. Within a year, he'd bought into a small import business. Within 3 years, he'd expanded it into something that operated in the gray spaces where legal and illegal blurred into profitable. By 25, people in Seattle's Korean community whispered his name with respect and fear in equal measure. By 30, he controlled everything from Vancouver to Los Angeles that mattered in their world, but none of it meant anything until he met Ji-Hai. She was a nurse at Harborview Medical Center. Second-generation Korean American, the kind of beautiful that made Jin-Woo forget how to form words. She'd been treating one of his men after a disagreement had gotten physical, and when Jin-Woo came to check on him, Ji-Hai had blocked his path with her small frame and told him in perfect Korean that if he wanted to see his friend, he'd have to wait like everyone else. And no one spoke to Jin-Woo that way. No one dared. He fell in love with her in that moment. It took 6 months to convince her to have dinner with him. Another year to convince her that what he did, the empire he'd built in the shadows, didn't define who he was. That he could be both the man the streets feared and the man who would lay down his life to protect her. They married on a rainy Saturday in a small ceremony. Ji-Hai wore her mother's hanbok. Jin-Woo wore the first suit he'd ever owned that wasn't meant for intimidation. And for the first time since landing in America with nothing, Jin-Woo understood what he'd actually been building toward. Not power, not respect, but a future that looked like love instead of survival. Soo-min was born 18 months later. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. screaming at the top of her lungs, furious at being forced into the world. Jin-Woo held his daughter for the first time and felt something shift in his chest. A vulnerability he'd spent his entire adult life eliminating suddenly became the center of his existence. He was 32 years old. The most feared man in 3 states, and a tiny 7-pound human, had rendered him completely defenseless. "She has your eyes," Ji-hai whispered, exhausted and radiant. Poor thing. Jin-Woo couldn't stop staring at his daughter's face. "I'm going to give her everything," he said. "Everything I never had. Just love her," Ji-hai said softly. "That's all she needs." For 2 years, Jin-Woo kept that promise. He was there for midnight feedings, for first steps, for the toddler tantrums and the sticky-handed hugs. He read bedtime stories in Korean about tigers and rabbits. He carried Soo-min on his shoulders through Pike Place Market. He was still the silent blade to the rest of the world, but to his daughter, he was just Appa. Then Ji-hai got pregnant again. The pregnancy was difficult from the start. Complications that made Jin-Woo's blood pressure spike every time Ji-hai winced. But she was determined, laughing off his worry, talking about how Soo-min needed a sibling, how their family would be complete. The labor lasted 19 hours. Jin-Woo held 2-year-old Soo-min in the waiting room, bouncing her on his knee, promising her she'd have a baby brother or sister soon. Soo-min had fallen asleep against his chest when the doctor came out, and Jin-Woo knew from the man's face that his world was ending. The baby, a boy, had been stillborn, and Ji-hai was hemorrhaging. They were doing everything they could, but Jin-Woo barely remembered the next hours. Just fragments, running down corridors, bursting into the room where Ji-hai lay, pale and fading, taking her hand while Soo-min cried in a nurse's arms, too young to understand, but old enough to sense catastrophe. "Take care of our girl," Ji-hai whispered, her voice barely audible. "Promise me." "I promise," Jin-Woo said, and felt her hand go slack in his. The funeral was held on a Wednesday. Jin-Woo stood beside 2 graves, one large, one impossibly small, holding his daughter while the rain came down in sheets. Soo-min kept asking for Yama, her small voice breaking his heart over and over. That's when Park Dae-young approached. Another boss from Vancouver, a rival who'd been circling Jin-Woo's territory for years. He stood beside Jin-Woo, ostensibly paying respects, and said quietly, "Beautiful family you had, Jin-Woo. See, such a tragedy." A pause. "Be a shame if something happened to what's left of it." Jin-Woo's hand tightened on his daughter's back. The threat was clear. The message delivered. Love was a weapon that could be used against him. That night, Jin-Woo made a decision that would haunt him for the next 3 years. He hired a nanny, then another, then a rotation of them. He bought a house with enough rooms that he and Soo-min never had to be in the same space. He provided everything material a child could need: toys, clothes, the best schools, the safest neighborhood. But he stopped holding her, stopped reading bedtime stories, stopped being Appa, because every time he looked at his daughter, he saw a target. Every time he felt love rising in his chest, he heard Park Dae-young's voice. "Be a shame if something happened to what's left of it." So Jin-Woo became the silent blade, completely cold, controlled, untouchable, and Soo-min learned that her father was the scary man who lived in the same house, but never smiled at her, never hugged her, never told her he loved her. The nannies came and went. Soo-min stopped asking for Appa. Jin-Woo told himself it was better this way, safer this way, until 4 days ago, when the jade serpents proved that distance didn't protect her at all. It just meant that when they took her, she didn't know her father would burn the world down to get her back. Now, standing outside Min-Jung Park's apartment building with 20 of his men, Jin-Woo stared at his phone. On the screen was the only photo he'd allowed himself to keep: Soo-min at 6 months old, laughing in Ji-hai's arms. His daughter didn't laugh anymore. At least not for him. 24 hours. He'd given the social worker 24 hours to do what he'd failed to do in 3 years, make his daughter remember that once, a long time ago, she'd been safe in his arms. The man who knocked on Min-Young's door at AM didn't look like a gangster. He looked like someone's friendly uncle, mid-40s, wire-rimmed glasses, carrying 2 cups of coffee from the Korean cafe downstairs. "Miss Park?" His English was accent-free, his smile disarming. "I'm David Kim. I work with Mr. Kang. May I come in?" Min-Jung had barely slept. Soo-min was still curled on the futon, finally unconscious after hours of crying. "I don't think, please." David's smile faded into something more genuine, more tired. I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here to explain. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Against her better judgment, Min-Jung stepped aside. David sat at her tiny kitchen table, pushed one coffee toward her, and got straight to the point. 4 days ago, the Jade Serpent Gang took Soo-min from her bedroom while she was sleeping. They left a note demanding Mr. Kang withdraw from 3 territories in exchange for her safe return. Min-Jung's hands wrapped around the coffee cup. He paid them? Immediately. No negotiation. No counter-offer. David's voice was matter-of-fact. The exchange was set for a warehouse in Tacoma. But there was police activity nearby unrelated, just bad timing. The Jade Serpents panicked, thought it was a setup. Instead of completing the handoff, they dumped Soo-min in Koreatown and scattered. They just left her. They cut her loose 3 blocks from here and drove away. David took off his glasses, cleaned them with methodical precision. Mr. Kang has had every resource searching for her since. 96 hours without sleep. He's turned this city inside out. Min-Jung thought about the bruises on Soo-min's wrists, the terror in her eyes. If he loves her so much, why is she terrified of him? David was quiet for a long moment. That's not my story to tell. But I will say this: whatever you think you know about Jin-Woo Kang, you're probably wrong. He stood, leaving his untouched coffee on the table. The 24 hours stands. Use them to figure out the truth. After he left, Min-Jung watched through her window as Jin-Woo's men maintained their positions in the street below. They weren't hiding. They weren't threatening. They were just there, waiting. At noon, Soo-min woke up and immediately started crying again. Is the scary man still here? No, baby. He's not here. Min-Jung smoothed back the child's hair. But Soo-min, he says he's your appa. Is that true? Soo-min's face crumpled. I don't want to go back. Please, and why are you so scared of him? Did he hurt you? He's always angry. Soo-min's voice dropped to a whisper. He never smiles. He never talks to me. He just watches, like I did something bad. But he won't say what. Min-Jung felt her chest tighten. She knew that feeling. The confusion of being a child and sensing you were unwanted but not understanding why. By evening, desperation drove Min-Jung to do something reckless. She bundled Soo-min in a blanket and carried her downstairs, where Jin-Woo's black sedan was parked at the curb. She knocked on the window. Jin-Woo rolled it down slowly. His eyes went immediately to his daughter, who buried her face in Min-Jung's shoulder. We need to talk, Min-Jung said. Not here. Somewhere she can't hear. 10 minutes later, they stood in the alley behind Min-Jung's building while David watched Soo-min through the apartment window. Jin-Woo kept his eyes on that window, his body angled so he could see his daughter even while talking to Min-Jung. She says you never talk to her, Min-Jung said, her voice hard. That you just watch her like she's done something wrong. What kind of father does that? Jin-Woo's jaw clenched. A father who's trying to keep her alive, by abandoning her emotionally, by making her afraid in her own home? Min-Jung's anger rose, fueled by her own childhood wounds. I know men like you. My father was just like you. Thought his career, his reputation, his empire was more important than his kid. You want to know what that does to a child? It destroys them. Your father left. Jin-Woo's voice was quiet, controlled, but something dangerous lurked underneath. He walked away because it was easier than staying. Don't compare me to him. Really? Because from where I'm standing, your father left because it was easier, Jin-Woo interrupted, turning to face her fully for the first time. I stay away because it's harder. Every single day, I want to hold my daughter. Every single day, I stop myself. Do you know what that costs? Min-Jung opened her mouth, then closed it. You think I don't know she's terrified of me? Jin-Woo's voice cracked, just barely. You think I don't hear her crying at night? You think I don't stand outside her door, wanting to comfort her, and forcing myself to walk away? He looked back up at the window, where Soo-min was visible, playing with the stuffed animal David had brought. The moment I show I love her, the moment anyone in my world knows she matters to me, she becomes the target. Not for leverage, for elimination. That's what the Jade Serpents taught me. Distance doesn't protect her. Nothing does. So you just, what? Pretend you don't care? I pretend I don't care, so that when they come for her, they think it won't destroy me. Jin-Woo's hands clenched into fists. But it will. It already has. Every day she looks at me like I'm a monster. Something inside me breaks. But better she hates me and stays alive than loves me and ends up dead. Min-Jung stared at him, her certainty wavering. That's not protection. That's just loneliness. For both of you. Yes. Jin-Woo's voice was flat. It is. Your wife told me to take care of our girl. Jin-Woo's eyes closed briefly. And this is the only way I know how. Min-Jung thought about her own father. About spending years believing he left because she wasn't enough. About the anger she'd carried, the assumptions she'd made. About how easy it was to see abandonment and assume it meant indifference. But looking at Jin-Woo's face at the exhaustion, the pain, the love he was desperately trying to hide, Min-Jung realized something that shook her to her core. Sometimes, the people who leave aren't running away from you. Sometimes they're trying to protect you from themselves. 18 hours left, Jin-Woo said, starting back toward his car. Figure out how to make her understand I'm not the monster. Because if you can't, he paused, then maybe I really am. Min-Jung stood in the alley long after he'd driven away, watching Soo-min through the window, and wondered if broken people could ever truly save each other, or if they just recognized their own wounds in different mirrors. The call came at a.m., shattering what little sleep Min-Jung had managed. Jin-Woo's voice was ice-cold and absolutely certain. Pack a bag. 5 minutes. You and Soo-min. Don't argue. What's happening? The Jade Serpents know where you are. They're coming to finish what they started. 4 minutes now. The line went dead. Min-Jung's hands shook as she threw clothes into a backpack. Hers, Soo-min's, the framed photograph the little girl refused to sleep without. She was lifting Soo-min, still half asleep and confused, when the apartment door opened. Jin-Woo stood in the threshold with David and 4 other men. He didn't ask permission. He just moved with lethal efficiency, checking the windows, scanning the street below. They want her dead, he said flatly, not looking at Min-Jung. Not for leverage. Not for negotiation. Dead. Because as long as she's alive, they think I have a weakness they can exploit. Where are we going? Somewhere they can't reach you. The penthouse was in downtown Seattle, 37 floors up in a building Jin-Woo's organization owned. The elevator required a keycard and a fingerprint scan. The door was reinforced steel disguised as mahogany. The windows were bulletproof. It was a fortress that felt like a cage. Soo-min clung to Min-Jung as they entered, her small body rigid with fear. She'd seen the guns on Jin-Woo's men. She'd heard the urgency in their voices. She was 5 years old and learning that the world wanted to hurt her. The guest bedroom is there, Jin-Woo said, pointing down the hall. You'll have everything you need. My men will be positioned throughout the building. No one gets in or out without my knowledge. How long? Min-Jung asked. As long as it takes. Jin-Woo's eyes flickered to Soo-min, then away. I have people hunting the Jade Serpents. When they're eliminated, you can go home. He turned to leave, but Soo-min's small voice stopped him. Is the scary man going to stay here too? Jin-Woo froze. For a moment, he looked like he might respond. Then he just nodded once and walked away, his footsteps echoing in the vast space. I don't like it here, Soo-min whispered. It's too big, too quiet. I know, baby, but we're safe here. Are you sure? Min-Jung looked at the reinforced door, the security monitors, the men with guns stationed in the hallway. Yes, I'm sure. 3 days in the penthouse felt like 3 months. Min-Jung tried to create normalcy for Soo-min, coloring books, Korean cartoons on the massive TV, simple meals cooked in the industrial kitchen. But the little girl was increasingly withdrawn, asking constantly when they could go home, flinching at every sound, and through it all, Jin-Woo was there. Not close, never close, but always present. Min-Jung started noticing the pattern on the second day. When Soo-min played in the living room, Jin-Woo would be visible through the office door, ostensibly working on his laptop, but his eyes constantly tracking his daughter's movements. When Soo-min napped, Jin-Woo would stand outside the guest bedroom door, his hand resting on the frame, like he wanted to go in, but couldn't make himself cross the threshold. On the third day, Soo-min knocked over a glass of juice and started crying, not because of the mess but because everything was too much, too scary, too overwhelming. Min-Jung was in the bedroom getting towels when she heard Jin-Woo's voice, speaking in Korean, soft and careful. Gwan chana, Soo-min. It's just juice. It's okay. Min-Jung came back to find Jin-Woo kneeling 6 feet from his daughter, not approaching. Just there. Soo-min had stopped crying and was staring at him with confusion rather than fear. I can clean it, Jin-Woo said quietly. If you want. Soo-min nodded, still wary, but something had shifted. She watched as her father cleaned up the spill with methodical care, and when he was done, she whispered, Thank you, Jin-Woo's hand trembled slightly as he stood. You're welcome. That night, Min-Jung found Jin-Woo on the balcony, looking out at the city lights. She'd put Soo-min to bed after another nightmare, and she was exhausted, emotionally wrung out, and tired of watching two people who desperately needed each other maintain this careful distance. She's starting to notice, Min-Jung said, stepping out into the cold night air, that you're always there, always watching. I know. Jin-Woo's voice was rough. I saw her looking at me today, really looking, not with fear, with curiosity. That's progress, is it? He turned to face her. Or am I just giving her hope for something I can't deliver? The moment this is over, the moment we're back in the real world, I have to go back to being the monster who keeps his distance. Why? Min-Jung challenged. Why does it have to be that way? Because the Jade Serpents aren't the last threat. There will always be another gang, another rival, another person who thinks they can use my daughter against me. His hands gripped the balcony rail. He gestured back toward the penthouse. This is borrowed time. A fantasy. Out there, in the real world, distance is the only thing that keeps her safe. No, Min-Jung said firmly. Distance is what made her a target in the first place. They took her because they thought you wouldn't care enough to retaliate. Because your reputation is that you care about nothing but power. I built that reputation to protect her, and it failed. Min-Jung's words were harsh, but necessary. She was taken anyway. She was hurt anyway. And now she's so traumatized. She can't even let her own father comfort her. Your strategy didn't work, Jin-Woo. It's time to try something else. Jin-Woo was quiet for a long time. I don't know how to be what she needs. Start by being there. Actually there. Not watching from a distance. Not standing outside her door. Inside, with her. What if I make it worse? What if you make it better? Before Jin-Woo could respond, David appeared in the balcony doorway, his face grim. We have a problem. The Jade Serpents found a building schematic. They know the penthouse layout, and they're moving tonight. Min-Jung's blood went cold. How long do we have? Maybe 2 hours. Maybe less. David looked at Jin-Woo. Boss, we need to move them again. But Jin-Woo shook his head. No more running. We make our stand here. He looked at Min-Jung. Get Soo-min to the panic room. Now, as alarms began to sound and men in tactical gear flooded the penthouse, Min-Jung realized something terrifying. The borrowed time had just run out, and the real test was about to begin. The scream cut through the penthouse at a.m. Raw and terrified, and unmistakably Soo-min's. Min-Jung bolted upright from the couch where she'd dozed off, her heart hammering. She ran toward the guest bedroom, but someone was already there. Jin-Woo stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame, his entire body rigid with indecision. Inside, Soo-min thrashed in the bed, tangled in blankets, sobbing words Min-Jung couldn't make out. I've got her, Min-Jung said, moving to step past him, but Jin-Woo's hand shot out, stopping her. No, let me. Jin-Woo, she's terrified, let me try. There was something in his voice, desperation, determination, something breaking that made Min-Jung step back. Jin-Woo entered the room slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. Soo-min was sitting up now, eyes wide but unseeing, still caught in whatever nightmare had her in its grip. Her small hands clawed at the blankets, and she was repeating the same word over and over. Yama, Yama, Yama. Soo-min. Jin-Woo said softly, kneeling beside the bed at a careful distance. It's okay. You're safe. It's just a bad dream. Soo-min's eyes focused on him, and her face transformed from terror to absolute horror. She screamed louder, scrambling backward until she hit the headboard. No. Get away. Don't hurt me. Anai. Jin-Woo reached out instinctively, just wanting to comfort, to reassure, but Soo-min shrieked and threw her pillow at him, her small body shaking with hysterical sobs. The scary man. Make him go away. Please. Please make him go away. Jin-Woo froze, his hands suspended in midair. And Min-Jung watched something she never thought she'd see. The silent blade broke. His face crumbled, not dramatically, not with tears or noise, but with a complete collapse of every defense he'd built over 3 years. His hand dropped, his shoulders sagged, and the look in his eyes was pure devastation. He stood without a word and walked out of the room. Min-Jung rushed to Soo-min, gathering the hysterical child in her arms, murmuring reassurances until the sobs finally subsided into hiccups. When Soo-min fell back asleep, exhausted from terror, Min-Jung went looking for Jin-Woo. She found him on the balcony, standing perfectly still, staring at nothing. The night air was freezing, but he didn't seem to notice. Jin-Woo, don't. His voice was hoarse. Don't tell me it's not my fault. Don't tell me she'll come around. Don't. Just don't. Min-Jung stood beside him, silent for a long moment. Then quietly, tell me about your wife. Jin-Woo's hands gripped the railing so hard his knuckles went white. Why? Because I need to understand. I need to know why you chose this. Why, you broke yourself. For a long time, Jin-Woo said nothing. Then slowly the words began to come. Her name was Ji-hai. She was a nurse. She was everything. His voice cracked. She made me believe I could be more than what I'd become. That power and violence weren't the only things I was capable of. What happened? She got pregnant again. Soo-min was too. The pregnancy was difficult, but Ji-hai was stubborn. Said our daughter needed a sibling. Said our family would be complete. Jin-Woo's breathing became ragged. The labor went wrong. The baby, a boy, was stillborn. And Ji-hai, she hemorrhaged. I held her hand while she died. Held Soo-min while she cried for her Yama. I was holding them both, and I couldn't save either of them. Min-Jung felt tears on her own cheeks. At the funeral, Park Dae-young, a rival boss, came to pay respects, stood beside me at the grave and said, beautiful family you had, Jin-Woo. See, be a shame if something happened to what's left of it. Jin-Woo's voice turned to ice. It was a threat, a reminder that everyone I loved could be used against me. That Soo-min was now my only vulnerability. So you decided to stop loving her? I decided to stop showing it. Jin-Woo finally looked at Min-Jung, and his eyes were haunted. Every instinct I have screams to hold my daughter, to comfort her when she cries, to read her bedtime stories and carry her on my shoulders and tell her every single day that she's my entire world. But the moment I do that, the moment anyone in my world knows she matters, she becomes the target. Not for leverage, for elimination. Because dead daughters can't be used as bargaining chips. And grieving fathers are easier to destroy than ones who still have something to fight for. That's why you stayed away. I thought if I kept my distance, if everyone believed I was too cold to care, they'd leave her alone. That she'd be safer being raised by nannies, living in my house, but not in my life. His voice broke. I was wrong. The jade serpents took her anyway. And now she's so terrified of me, she can't even let me comfort her nightmares. She doesn't understand, Min-Jung said softly. She's 5. She doesn't know you're trying to protect her. She just knows her father doesn't hold her. I can't, Min-Jung. Don't you see? The moment I do, the moment I show weakness, someone will use it. Someone will hurt her to hurt me. It's better she hates me and stays alive than loves me and ends up like Ji-hai, is it? Min-Jung challenged. Because from where I'm standing, you've been dead for 3 years. And so has she. You're both just going through the motions, surviving, but not living. Is that really what Ji-hai would have wanted? For you to be so afraid of losing Soo-min that you lose her anyway, just. Slowly, Jin-Woo's composure finally shattered completely. His shoulders shook, and a sound escaped him that Min-Jung had never heard from him, something between a sob and a gasp. I don't know how to be her father anymore, he whispered. I've been the monster for so long, I don't remember how to be anything else. Min-Jung put her hand on his arm, feeling him flinch at the contact. You're not a monster, Jin-Woo. Monsters don't stand outside their daughter's door every night wishing they could go in. Monsters don't break themselves trying to protect what they love. You're just broken, like all of us. I don't know how to fix this. Neither do I, Min-Jung admitted. But maybe that's not what matters. Maybe what matters is that you try. Inside, Soo-min cried out in her sleep again, a small frightened sound. Jin-Woo's entire body tensed, every instinct screaming to go to her. But his feet stayed planted on the balcony. I can't, he whispered. I can't be what she needs. Then learn, Min-Jung said. Because the alternative, staying the scary man she has nightmares about, that's not protecting her. That's just condemning you both to a lifetime of loneliness. Jin-Woo stared at the door that separated him from his daughter, and for the first time in 3 years, he let himself want something more than just her survival. He wanted her love, even if he had no idea how to earn it back. The explosion came at 3:47 a.m., shattering the reinforced glass in the penthouse entryway with a sound like the world ending. Min-Jung was thrown backward by the blast, her ears ringing, smoke filling her lungs. Through the chaos, she heard David shouting orders, gunfire erupting, men moving with military precision. And underneath it all, a sound that made her blood freeze. Soo-min screaming, "Get them to the panic room." Jin-Woo's voice cut through the chaos, and suddenly Min-Jung was being pulled to her feet by David, pushed toward a hidden door in the office wall. "Move, move, move." David shoved them into a reinforced steel room the size of a walk-in closet, then turned back to the fight. Min-Jung stumbled inside with Soo-min clutched against her chest. The little girl was hysterical, her small body rigid with terror, the sound of gunfire triggering every memory of her kidnapping. She wasn't just crying, she was screaming, hyperventilating, her eyes wild and unseeing. "Soo-min, look at me, baby. Look at me." Min-Jung tried to ground her, but the child was beyond reach. Lost in trauma and panic, the panic room door started to close, then stopped. Jin-Woo stood in the threshold, his face torn between staying and going. "I have to lead the defense," he said, but he wasn't moving. He was staring at his daughter, who was falling apart in front of him. "Then go." Min-Jung shouted over Soo-min's screams, but Jin-Woo stepped inside instead, and the door sealed behind him with a mechanical thunk. The panic room plunged into emergency lighting, red and ominous. Outside, the gunfire intensified. Inside, Soo-min's screams reached a pitch that made Min-Jung's chest ache. "Soo-min, ah." Jin-Woo's voice was different now, stripped of control, raw with desperation. He knelt in front of his daughter, not at a distance this time, but close. "Right there. Soo-min, ah." Listened to Appa's voice, but Soo-min only screamed louder, her small hands covering her ears, her body shaking so violently, Min-Jung could barely hold her. "I know you're scared," Jin-Woo continued, his voice breaking. "I know those bad men hurt you. I know you don't trust me. I know. I'm the scary man who never holds you, who never tells you he loves you, who makes you feel alone in your own home." Something in his voice, the crack, the pain made Soo-min's screams quiet to sobs. "But I need you to know something, baby girl." Jin-Woo's hands were shaking. "When those men took you, I would have burned the whole world down to find you. Every second you were gone, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could see was your face, and all I could feel was terror that I'd never see you again." Soo-min's eyes focused on him for the first time, confusion breaking through the panic. "I should have told you every single day that you are the only thing I love in this world," Jin-Woo whispered, tears streaming down his face. "I should have held you when you cried. I should have read you bedtime stories. I should have been your Appa instead of the monster in the corner. I was wrong, Soo-min, ah. I was so wrong. I thought keeping you at a distance would keep you safe, but all it did was break us both, Appa." Soo-min's voice was tiny, confused, like she was hearing the word for the first time. "Yes, baby. I'm your Appa, and I love you more than anything in this world. I always have, even when I couldn't show it, even when I made you afraid. I love you. I love you. I love you." The panic room door exploded inward. A man in tactical gear stood in the opening, gun raised, smoke curling around him. Behind him, the penthouse was destroyed, furniture overturned, windows shattered, bodies on the ground. Jin-Woo moved on pure instinct, positioning himself between the gun and his daughter, his arms spread wide. "No." The word tore from his throat, not a command, but a plea. "Please, take me. Leave them, please." The silent blade was begging. The gunman's finger moved to the trigger, and then something impossible happened. Soo-min tore herself from Min-Jung's arms and ran forward, her small body moving faster than Min-Jung could stop her. She threw herself in front of her father, her tiny arms spread wide in a mirror of his protective stance. "Don't hurt my Appa," she screamed. "Don't hurt him." Time seemed to stop. Jin-Woo stared down at his daughter, this tiny, brave 5-year-old standing between him and death, and something fundamental shifted in the universe. "Appa," Soo-min sobbed, turning to look up at him with tear-filled eyes. "Don't let him hurt you, Appa." It was the first time she'd called him that in 2 years. The distraction lasted only a second, but it was enough. Gunfire erupted from behind the Jade Serpent operative David and Jin-Woo's men breaching from the secondary entrance. The gunman went down, and suddenly the panic room was filled with friendly forces, voices shouting, "Clear, clear." But Jin-Woo didn't hear any of it. He dropped to his knees and wrapped his arms around his daughter for the first time in 3 years, pulling her against his chest, like he'd wanted to do every single day, but had denied himself. Soo-min buried her face in his shoulder and sobbed, not from fear anymore, but from relief, from release, from finally being held by her father. "I've got you," Jin-Woo whispered into her hair, his voice wrecked. I've got you, baby girl. I'm never letting go again. Never. I promise. You promise, Appa? Soo-min's small voice was muffled against his shoulder. I promise. I should have been holding you all along. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Min-Jung watched through her own tears as father and daughter clung to each other in the wreckage of the panic room, surrounded by smoke and chaos and broken walls. But finally whole, outside, David barked orders to secure the building and check for additional threats. The Jade Serpent's assault had failed there. Forces eliminated or captured. But the real victory wasn't tactical. It was the man on his knees, holding his daughter like she was the only thing that mattered in the world, because she was, and, for the first time in 3 years, he wasn't afraid to show it. I love you, Soo-min. Jin-Woo whispered. I love you so much. I love you too, Appa, Soo-min said. And the walls that had kept them apart for 3 years, finally crumbled to dust. 6 months later, Min-Jung stood in the doorway of Jin-Woo's house in Magnolia and watched something she never thought she'd see. Soo-min was sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by crayons and construction paper, chattering in rapid Korean about the butterfly she was drawing. And sitting cross-legged beside her, sleeves rolled up, and a purple crayon in his hand, was Kang Jin-Woo, Seattle's most feared crime boss, coloring with the intense concentration most people reserved for life or death decisions. Appa, you have to stay inside the lines, Soo-min said, with the exasperated patience of a child teaching an adult something obvious. I'm trying, Jin-Woo replied, his tone completely serious. Butterflies are harder than they look. Mine's better. Soo-min held up her drawing proudly. Yours is definitely better. Jin-Woo studied his daughter's artwork with genuine admiration. Should we put it on the fridge with the others? Soo-min nodded enthusiastically, and Min-Jung watched as Jin-Woo stood, lifting his daughter effortlessly onto his shoulders. Soo-min squealed with delight as he carried her to the kitchen, where the refrigerator was covered in a rainbow of her drawings, each one held up by magnets, each one a testament to 6 months of healing. The Jade Serpents no longer existed. Jin-Woo's response to their attack had been swift, absolute, and final. Within 48 hours, every member of their organization had either been arrested, disappeared, or decided Seattle was no longer a viable place to do business. The message had been received by every criminal organization from Vancouver to Los Angeles. Kang Jin-Woo's daughter was not leverage. She was a line no one crossed twice, but the real transformation hadn't been in Jin-Woo's empire. It had been in his home. Min-Jung came 3 evenings a week now, ostensibly to help Soo-min process her trauma through play therapy and art, but somewhere along the way, it had become less about professional obligation and more about family. She'd sit with Soo-min and build elaborate block towers. She'd help Jin-Woo navigate the maze of elementary school forums and parent-teacher conferences. She'd taught him how to braid Soo-min's hair badly at first, then progressively better until he could create something that wouldn't embarrass his daughter at school. Min-Jung and I. Soo-min spotted her and ran over, wrapping small arms around Min-Jung's legs. Look what Appa and I made. The butterfly drawing was taped to the fridge at Soo-min's eye-level purple and pink with glitter that would probably end up all over Jin-Woo's house for weeks. It's beautiful. Soo-min, Min-Jung said, crouching to hug the little girl properly. Appa helped. But he's not very good at coloring yet. Soo-min whispered this like it was a secret. I'm teaching him. Jin-Woo raised an eyebrow. I can hear you, baby girl. I know. Soo-min giggled and ran back to her crayons. Min-Jung stood, meeting Jin-Woo's eyes. The transformation in him was just as profound as in his daughter. He smiled now, not often, but genuinely when he did. He'd rearranged his entire schedule around kindergarten drop-offs and bedtime stories. He still ran his empire with ruthless efficiency, but now there were non-negotiable blocks of time marked Soo-min that not even his most urgent business could interrupt. How's she doing? Min-Jung asked quietly. Better. Jin-Woo watched his daughter with the kind of attention he once reserved for threats and opportunities. Still has nightmares sometimes. Still gets scared when I have to go out at night, but she doesn't flinch when I hug her anymore. And yesterday, she told her teacher I was her favorite person in the whole world. His voice cracked slightly on the last words. And how are you doing? Min-Jung asked. Jin-Woo was quiet for a moment. Learning. Every day. I'm learning how to be what she needs. Some days are easier than others. He looked at Min-Jung. Thank you for not giving up on either of us. You did the hard part. You chose to try. We both know I wouldn't have without you pushing me off that cliff. Min-Jung smiled. Sometimes people need a push. Hey, Soo-min called from the living room. Are we still going to the waterfront? You promised, Appa. Jin-Woo checked his watch. Yes, we're still going. Go get your jacket. 20 minutes later, they stood at Seattle's waterfront on a rare sunny Saturday, watching Soo-min chase seagulls with the fearless enthusiasm of a child who was remembering how to just be a child. Her laughter rang out across the pier, pure and unself-conscious, and Min-Jung felt something in her chest expand. She called you Anai again today, Jin-Woo said, standing beside Min-Jung on the bench. Big sister. She tells everyone at school she has a big sister now. I heard. Min-Jung watched Soo-min twirl in circles, arms spread wide. I didn't correct her. Good, because she's right. Jin-Woo's voice was serious. Your family, Min-Jung. To both of us. I know you didn't sign up for any of this, neither did you. Min-Jung interrupted. Neither did Soo-min. But here we are. Here we are. Jin-Woo echoed. Soo-min came running back, breathless and beaming. Without hesitation, she climbed into her father's lap, settling against his chest like it was the most natural thing in the world. Jin-Woo's arms wrapped around her automatically now, no longer fighting the instinct to hold her. Appa, can we get tteokbokki? Soo-min asked. Of course. What about you? Min-Jung and I. Are you staying for dinner? Min-Jung looked at them, this impossible family that shouldn't work but somehow did. The mafia boss who'd learned that love wasn't weakness but strength. The little girl who'd taught her father how to be brave. And herself, the social worker who'd spent 7 years saving broken things and discovered she was just as broken as the people she tried to help. Yes, Min-Jung said, and meant it with her whole heart. I'm staying. Soo-min cheered, and Jin-Woo smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. As they walked toward the Korean restaurants, Soo-min, holding both their hands and swinging between them. Min-Jung thought about the night she'd found a terrified child in the rain, about the choice she'd made to bring her inside, about the dangerous man who'd knocked on her door and the walls that had fallen between them all. Her phone buzzed with a new case file from work, another displaced child who needed someone to fight for them. Min-Jung would take the case. She would fight. She would save who she could. But tonight, she would have dinner with her family. The one she hadn't been born into, but had chosen. The one that had chosen her back. Sometimes the most broken people are the ones who understand healing best. Sometimes the most dangerous people are capable of the fiercest love. And sometimes the families we choose are the ones that save us. Anai, Soo-min said, looking up at Min-Jung with those bright, healing eyes. I'm glad you found me in the rain. Me too, baby girl, Min-Jung whispered. Me too. Above them, seagulls cried and wheeled in the gray Seattle sky. The city moved around them, indifferent, busy, vast. But in this small moment, on this crowded pier, 3 people who'd been lost had found their way home, not to a place, but to each other, and that was enough. Sometimes the smallest hands carry the greatest power to change everything. Sometimes a child in the rain becomes the bridge between broken people who need each other to heal. And sometimes the most beautiful families are the ones we build from the wreckage of our past, one brave choice at a time. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that even the hardest people can learn to love. And even the most broken families can become whole again. Comment below. What would you do if you found a lost child in the rain?